I've just opened the room for attendees to start joining us online here. So thanks for coming in. We'll just give everyone a couple of minutes time to join us. That shouldn't take too long. Just going to give that another minute or so. Welcome in everybody as you're joining. We're just going to give attendees time to join the room with us. Just as you're coming into the room, welcome. Sorry to those who are hearing me repeat myself, but we're having new attendees come into the room all of the time. So I just want to reassure them that they're in the right place and that the webinar will be starting, content will be starting very shortly. We'll just give everyone time to populate the room. Welcome to those just joining in now. Looks like the entrants are starting to slow down a little bit, so I think we can get on to some of the housekeeping. Now, today we're expecting quite a large audience, which that's fantastic. All that means is logistically our capacity to sort of listen to live questions and so on may be somewhat restricted just due to the volume. So what we might ask you to do is actually, rather than use the raise the hand facility, talk to us via chat, and you'll see that in your toolbar, or the Q&A facility. You'll see this raise hand facility. I think with the size of the audience that we have today, that will probably be too difficult to manage. We'll see how we go towards the end of the session as to whether or not we can open it to live questions. But for the moment, if you can use the chat facility as well as the Q&A. So today, I'll just go back to that slide. We're going to be joined in a moment by Colin Walker, who is an Assistant Commissioner with the ATO and heading up the team who's been developing the My Gov ID processes and procedures. We've also got Cassandra Scott, who's a director with AAT, and of course myself, Rochelle, CEO. So we talked about the chat, and that's the screenshot that you'll see, and you can chat to just the panelists, or you can chat to all, being the panelists and the attendees. So you select that when you're actually typing up your questions. Okay, all right, next one. So we won't use the raise hand, lower hand for the moment. And then there's also the Q&A option, which looks like that for you. And basically, everyone will see the questions there. Now, just to reassure you, we anticipate from previous experience that we could have quite a few questions coming out about your individual circumstances. And that may mean that we can't get to all of the questions today. So I've checked in with Colin, and what we'll be doing is putting together a Q&A document at the end of this and sharing that with the ATO for them to check over, making sure that we're giving you all of the right advice about your individual circumstances. And then we'll absolutely be sharing that with you next week with a recording of this session. So I'll shortly hand over to Colin, but I just wanted to point out a couple of things first, because we've been talking about this at the AAT roadshows and discussion groups, as well as the newsletter and so on. And there are a couple of really common points of confusion around the My Gov ID. And I'd say my experience to date says that the largest point of confusion is the distinction between My Gov ID and your MyGov account. Now, these are completely separate. It's a little bit unfortunate that their names are so similar, but they do very different things. essentially, your My Gov ID is going to completely replace the Auskey eventually. Not yet, not overnight. We've got until the 1st of April next year. But your My Gov ID is essentially your passport to a number of government services, including the ATO online services. So you'd know by now that the ATO online services are our brilliant new platform that replaces the old portals. And currently you can gain access to the ATO online services via your old Auskey method, or by utilising the identification passport called My Gov ID. And Colin's going to kindly walk us through today how you set that up, how you set your clients up, and even staff within the system, and organise access and so on. So Colin, thank you so much for your time in preparation for today, as well as presenting today. We'd like to extend a really warm welcome from the AAT community.
Thanks, Cassandra and Rochelle. It's very nice to be here and to be able to talk to you all. I thought one of the very important things that we do need to make sure that you remember is that MyGovID as a replacement, or MyGovID and RAM as a replacement for Auskey, really doesn't change your world as far as working through and looking after your staff, ensuring they're able to access our online services and other government services. So what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to your clients are added to your client list in exactly the same way as today. That is through the client update function, either in online services for agents or in software, if it happens to be you have that function in the software. So the client side of things is not part of this. So let's first of all have a look at what's happening in this digital identity world. It was mentioned at the beginning that our move from Auskey to MyGovID is really around security, and it is. Auskey is not a particularly secure environment. We want to, along with a whole of government approach, move to a situation where two-factor authentication is the base, and the government's GovPass program is aimed at just doing that. Now, Auskey's also suffer from one major problem, and that is that their use-by date is very, very close now, and they will basically cease to operate from around about the 27th of March. Now, there are a number of reasons for that, but interestingly, one of those is related to the fact that they are a Java-based product. And being a Java-based product, if you have a browser that doesn't have Java, you can't use Auskey. And over time, what's been happening is the browsers have started to remove Java. And as a result, the number of browsers that are now available for using Auskey is diminishing at a very rapid rate. So two things coming there. Auskey is definitely going to turn off, and you will need a better authentication process. Now, the second part of this is to point out that MyGovID and RAM as a replacement for Auskey is actually a very different kind of a concept. We know that in the Auskey situation, many Auskeys are actually shared, and there are also Auskeys sitting on USBs to allow mobility. The issue is that we really do not know who is the person who is using the Auskey. And that's not a very good situation in a security situation. In the case of MyGovID, MyGovID is actually a personal credential. It's your credential. So when you get your MyGovID, it will be able to be used as the credential that will not only link in your into your agent practice, but also will allow linkages to other businesses that you may be looking after in different ways. So it's a wider use credential. It's also a credential that travels with you. So if you, as an agent, happen to move from a particular practice to another practice, then your MyGov ID goes with you. The access to systems is cut off using the other part of our system, which is RAM. So it's a very different type of credential, a very safe credential, and one that over time will be used to access other government services. So I thought maybe we'd just move on to the next screen and have a look at how you actually set up your MyGov ID. It's really quite simple. I will accept that you do need to have a mobile device that is a smartphone, iOS 10 or above, or an Android phone with an operating system 7 or above. If you don't, you won't be able to go through this process. So that essentially is a given. I'm afraid if you don't have a phone that matches that, you're going to need to get one. There are some pretty cheap phones out there that will meet those requirements. I was told not so long ago that around $200 will get you one. I walked into the post office yesterday and I noticed they're selling one for $79. So I'm not sure what it does, but there are some pretty cheap versions around there. So let's first of all have a look and see how we go about setting up our MyGov ID. And interestingly, I held off until early this morning to set up my MyGov ID just to see how it would go just before we actually linked. So here we go. You download the app. So where do you find it? You go to the App Store on your phone and you find the MyGov ID app item. On your screen there, you'll see down the bottom with little red lines around it is what the app looks like. Download that app. And once you've downloaded the app, then all you need to do is open the app and it will get you to put in an email address, your name, and from there, it will send you and a phone number, and that will then send you the a link which you put in those numbers, and then you are ready to go. It will ask you then to have a look and choose as to which things that you need to use to authenticate. You have a choice. You can use your Australian passport, you can use a driver's license, you can use your Medicare card, or nowadays you can also use your birth certificate. So there are 4 forms. You only need 2 of those forms. So what do? It will ask you to verify 2 identity documents. You'll be able to verify more if you want to. That will be useful in later years, but for now 2 is enough. You need to remember that if you want to access online services for agents, you need only to verify 2 documents at the moment. If you can't verify 2 documents, you won't be able to get a standard MyGov ID. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. What it will do is when you press on one of those buttons, you'll see in the third picture there, say the Australian passport, what it will do is ask you to scan using your phone your passport page that's got all the information. If you haven't actually got a camera on your phone, you can punch in the numbers, and then it will ask you whether it's okay to verify that through the Australian Passport Office. When it is verified, you'll get a tick and a little round green circle will appear, and that'll be one. Then you can choose another one. I suggest you use your Medicare card or a birth certificate. What I've noted is that some people, particularly Canberra-based and Melbourne-based people, are finding some difficulty getting their driver's license to verify. So you can certainly try it. You can photograph it. once it's photographed, make sure that the information on the driver's license or the information on the Medicare card matches the information that it's repeating back to you. If it doesn't, change it. Now, it could occur simply because of the way it took the photograph. Again, it'll ask you, can it do a comparison? You tick that and then it'll do it, and you'll get a little green tick and a round circle, which will say that one's been accepted. You then have got yourself a MyGov ID, and it'll tell you it is a standard MyGov ID and it's ready to use. So that's a really good point to have got to. Okay, we might go to the next screen. It's not, as I said, it's not particularly difficult to get there. Some people have had problems due to the fact that they have different names sitting on various of their things, such as, for example, your birth certificate might say Joe, your passport might say Giuseppe, and your driver's license may say Joseph. You will have a problem simply because you will need to get those aligned. Otherwise, you won't be able to get yourself a MyGov ID. So changing those details to get them corrected before you go in is going to be important. Okay, so let's move on to logging into using our MyGov ID. I just want to, first of all, go through the login screen and tell you and show you how that happens, because this is really interesting. And then later on, we can talk about RAM. The first steps that we're going to cover will be just logging in using the MyGov ID for the first time to access the online services, which is, I think, the standard one that you'll be doing. You can do this on any mobile device or even a desktop device, because Auskey is available on all of those. All you need to do is press the button that says login using MyGov ID. Then you'll get what you see in front of you. Getting the app has already been done. Now, what you need to do is open your MyGov ID app on your phone. What's going to happen is that when you press the button on your login in online services, what happened was that it will ask you for some information. It will then send this number to your phone. So open the app and accept that request. Let's just move on to the next one. Now, when you go to open the app, if you've got Touch ID, you just simply press on the Touch ID and it'll take you in. You then enter the code that appeared on your screen that you're using to get access to online services for agents. When you enter that code just press accept, and you'll find then that you can close the app and go back to your desktop, because you're actually now in online services for agents. So a reasonably simple process. Whenever it says remember, please try to make sure that you press the button remember, because it'll then avoid some of these steps as you go through in the next time. So for example, if we go back one screen, you'll remember that there was a tick box on the left-hand side when you were going through and logging in, and it's had a remember button. Just press remember, and if you're using the same browser and the same telephone, then that will solve or at least reduce some of the problems that you might have going through. Okay, so now you're able to access online services for agents. You can use that in your usual way, and provided that you don't just leave it open and don't use it at all for quite some time, then it'll continue to operate as such. It may log you out if you leave it sitting there. I'm not certain at the moment exactly how long it is, but I think it's about 20 minutes that it allows you to stay in without doing something. If you do get logged out, you'll need to go through the process of logging in again. The other interesting thing I thought that I should tell you is that you can actually put your MyGovID on multiple devices. It doesn't have to stay on one. And when you actually do the verification and get your MyGovID, there is nothing stored on your telephone. The information that we compare to is actually not on your phone at all. So people who maybe find your phone will not be able to actually access anything unless they know all the logins that you have and how to get into your phone. If you happen to lose your phone, you can reload MyGovID onto another device. So it's not as bad as what you might think. And I suppose a good example is my daughter, who is a young person coaching rowing, dropped her phone a couple of days ago in Lake Burley Griffin, getting out of a rowing boat or a scull, and 35 minutes later they got the machine out of the water. It's still running. I'm not sure how, but the repair people managed to get the water out, etc. But if you happen to do that and your phone died, you can certainly load it up again on another device. Okay, moving on. The next screen is starting the process of talking about RAM, which is the next part of how you move to authorising your staff. Now,
Colin?
there are a number... Yes, sure.
Sorry, I just wonder, before we move on to RAM, how do you feel about answering some of the questions that have been posed in relation to the actual setup of MyGovID and identification, etc.?
Sure, yeah, let's do that. That'll be fine.
Okay, we start with Charles, who has said that he's got 2 agent numbers, one for the sole trader and one for a company. Can he use one phone to log into both instances of his, agent requirements?
The answer to that is yes. There is no problem there, and that's because MyGovID is your personal credential. The link to your practice is through RAM, which we're going to talk about later. So the answer is yes. You only have one MyGovID. You can't have more than one.
Okay, thank you, because it's about the individual.
It is, that's right. You are a person, you can't be 2 people.
Okay, excellent. So Charles, we'll probably give more of an answer to that as we progress through RAM then.
Yes.
Jim has asked, are we required to provide mobile phones to our staff and then pay a monthly fee to maintain them? This will be quite expensive, and will the agents be responsible for what the staff have on the phones?
So far as a requirement to provide a mobile device to staff goes, there is nothing in workplace relations that requires it. There is no reason why a staff member can't have their own phone. And in actual fact, what we do recommend is that they load their personal certification or their MyGovID through the app on their own personal phone. If a practice decides that they feel they want to provide phones and they want to provide the actual service that goes with it, that's very much up to the practice. But certainly, no, there is no requirement.
And I think to add there, Colin, and just to make the point for Jim, that moving forward, the MyGovID will be the individual's identification passport to many other government services outside of the tax office. So it would be appropriate for those individuals to have their own devices. Would you agree with that statement, Colin?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We are merely the one of a number of government departments, and they will continue to grow. And MyGovID will be the the credential that's going to be used there. Actually, there is some information on the website around the other departments that are going in now, and will continue to grow over time. It is a whole of government solution.
So, Colin, perhaps in our Q&A document, just to reassure everybody, we could include the links to those pages that we're referring to and other ATO information about the transition and these services.
Yes, absolutely. There's on the last slide, when we get to it, you'll find that I've actually put down a range of places where you can get help.
Excellent.
We've set up a special landing page on ato.gov.au, which is essentially /TP My Gov ID. Nice and easy. Tax practitioner My Gov ID.
Excellent.
So, however, if you don't remember that, it's fine. Just put My Gov ID into our search engine, and it will take you to all the information.
Okay, thank you so much. Robin's just advised us that her phone is not compatible with the app. How can she use My Gov ID? I think you've indicated that there is no option with that. It's simply a case of having to upgrade the phone.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but there is no way that we can deal with that. It's iOS 10 with Apple devices, and it's 7 for Google, the Android devices, 7 and above.
Now, I've got a couple of queries around birth certificates, one from Anonymous and one from Belinda. Anonymous has her birth certificate in a maiden name. Does that mean she won't be able to use it?
I'm not sure at the moment. I actually wrote that question down this morning because myself, because the issue we have is that certainly where name change has occurred because of marriage, we do have that down as one of the things we need to sort out before the end of March. So that's on our to-do list at the moment. Okay. We added the birth certificate only at the beginning of December as a fourth style. But at the moment, I think that you won't need a new birth certificate, but we have to work out how you can actually authenticate using it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Colin.
So I'll come back on that one.
Okay, thank you very much. And Belinda's issue, she's born in a brilliant year, if I do say so myself, in 1973, and it's a known issue with your team that those birth certificates won't work, and she just wanted to share that with everyone as an FYI.
That's a really good point. And again, if the 73 birth certificates don't work, then we will be working on a solution to that one.
Excellent. We've got one for, must the email be the individual staff member, or can it be a Practice Central email for step 2?
Essentially, what we suggest is that the email address be the individual's personal email address when it comes to setting up MyGovID. When it comes to sending authorities under RAM, it can be another email address, the business address, fine. But the reason we say that is you certainly can set it up as the business address. The problem is that if you then leave that practice, you will need to change your MyGovID. And that can create problems. At the moment, we can't change those. That's right. Something we'll have further down the line. Okay. So as it's a personal credential, we are recommending that you use it, that it be the personal email address.
Okay. So Anne has set up her MyGovID and has standard service, but she's got a note at the bottom saying some services need more identification,
yes,
indicating birth certificate, but she wasn't born in Australia. So how does this work? Is that also something that's a work in progress, Colin?
No. Well, yes and no. Sorry about that. If she's now got a standard, so she's managed to verify 2, she has a standard MyGovID, that will give you access to everything currently available. The The next level, needing a third set, is going to be for future development.
Okay. Yeah, so Gail, I think we've answered that one as well. That's the maiden name with the birth certificate. And once logging in, it asks to link an ABN. Should we not do this?
I don't think you're in My Gov ID. I think you're in RAM.
Yeah. Okay, well, Anne, we'll hold that because you might actually have that answer covered. Wowee, we've got quite a few questions left, Colin.
That's
so
okay.
perhaps I'm wondering, do we dive back into the presentation, and I might have to take some of these questions offline depending on how long we take to finish.
Look, I'm quite happy to keep going a little bit longer on the My Gov ID, because the funny thing is the RAM part is the linking to the practice. You can't do that unless you've got a My Gov ID. And at the moment, my main focus is getting people to get those.
Okay.
And getting the staff so they have their My Gov IDs, because at that stage, once you've got them, you can then begin the process of looking after the practice.
Okay then, all right, well, we'll continue on, and I'm sure everyone's appreciating you thinking about their individual circumstances, so thank you. Christine is saying that, do you use MyGov ID as an employee working within a business, or is it only for agents?
No, MyGov ID will allow connecting to, it will allow a connection with respect to particular positions that you may have. So, for example, if you're a director of a company and you want to use the business portal to access information about your company, then MyGov ID connected to RAM will allow you to do that. So it's not only agents. In the situation of the businesses are going through exactly the same process as we're talking about today.
Okay, excellent. And Sue's got a New Zealand passport. Will she be able to use a Kiwi passport?
No.
So it'll just be Medicare, driver's license. What about a Kiwi birth certificate, Colin?
No, that won't work either. Unfortunately, the only reason that it doesn't work is that we don't have access to a reliable document verification service that will pick up other people's information, other country information. So it's only Australian-based information that you'll be able to use.
Okay, so Medicare and driver's license in that instance.
Yes, exactly.
Mandy's asked, does the MyGov ID require internet connection to get the code, or does it operate like alternative authentication apps where no data connection is required?
No, MyGov ID requires an internet connection. And if you want to access something like online services for agents, you definitely have to have an internet connection, because your access is through use of that device. So in other words, what you're going to do is you'll open the app, you will then accept the message that's come across from online services so that you can actually access it. You, however, don't need a phone connection. So in those areas that you've got internet but no phone, it will still work on that.
Okay, great. So Amarelli said she assumes, or he, sorry, that the app can be downloaded on a computer as well as the mobile?
No, it can't. Not the app. The app won't work on a computer as such. It's a mobile phone device or similar device.
Okay.
There is no machine answer to MyGov ID as such.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just trying to make sure I'm up to where we... So Sue's just wanting to recap on the acceptable identification documents, Colin?
Sure. There are 4 currently. That is a driver's license, an Australian passport, an Australian Medicare card, or an Australian birth certificate.
Okay, excellent. So we've just got a comment about the birth certificate situation being pretty important one to sort out, but I know you've indicated to us that your team's working on that. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We understand. Essentially, My Gov ID is in public beta at the moment. In other words, we're going through a process where we have it available to everybody. We have an alternative, which is Auskey, and as we find issues or problems, then we are dealing with them at that stage. So we'll go through and we'll continue to do that until we've got it correct. But we do have a deadline on it, which is the end of March.
Okay, excellent. So I think you've answered this one as well, but Julie said she set up her MyGov ID, but with a work email, and she understands it can't be changed now, but you are working on the capacity to change that. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's just that it's more about the fact that it is a credential for you to use elsewhere as well as at work. And if you tied yourself to a work email, which you can't access if you leave the practice, then you won't be able to use your MyGov ID. So that's why we suggest use a personal one so that it can be set up that way.
Okay, yep. Now, Marlon has asked, will it be able to be accessed whilst you're overseas? And Colin, I also had a separate email from a member this morning saying that she travels overseas for 6 to 8 weeks a year to visit parents, and she changes to a local SIM. So I guess A, if you're using your Australian SIM, are there any impacts? And B, if you're using a local SIM, does that change anything?
The SIM doesn't really matter because, as I said, it's actually an internet-based system.
Yep.
So the app actually works that way. And yes, you can use it overseas. There's for anybody that happened to watch the webcast on Monday that we did from the ATO, there was an agent on that webcast called Paul Meisner. And Paul does travel extensively overseas with his family. He's got an enormously great lifestyle, and he does a lot of his work in internet cafes. And yes, MyGov ID will work quite effectively over there.
Okay, I've just had someone point out, and I'm not sure if you're aware, Colin, that 1975 is apparently also an issue with the birth certificates.
Okay, I've noted that down.
Thank you.
If anybody's got issues that I can't answer, I am noting them down because they're very important. We'll feed them back to the teams to work out what's going wrong and get those corrected.
Yeah, and we appreciate your openness to all of that, Colin. It's fantastic that you take that on board for us. John's just asked, does a smartphone app require face recognition or thumbprint?
It actually doesn't, but normally that makes life easier when it comes to opening your phone. So, for example, as I said, if you want to open the app, you don't need to punch in all the details. If you've got a thumbprint base, it'll just take you in there. So it has advantages, but no, you don't have to have that.
Okay, excellent. Just need more detail from someone that I've just sent. Kylie's wondering how staff in the Philippines, etc., who are part of, offshoring teams, able to get a MyGov ID.
Yep, that's a very interesting question, and one that we are continuing to work on. Essentially, the solution that is going to be published very soon is that these workers will be able to get a base level MyGov ID. The base level MyGov ID will require the staff to send certified copies of certain information to the ATO. And once we have gone through the process of checking those and verifying who the person is, then the administrator of the practice will then be able to provide them with access using that. Now, there will be restricted access for those people because they can't get a standard MyGov ID. And the restrictions are basically around those things that are of high risk around privacy. So, for example, they will not be able to change bank account details, but they'll be able to do most things within the OSFA environment.
Okay, excellent. And Sue, who was talking to us, I'm pretty sure Sue was from New Zealand with the passport and the birth certificate. That means it leaves her only with the Medicare card and driver's license.
Yes.
Perhaps she's located in either Canberra or Melbourne. And if the driver's license is not working, is there a way she can overcome the problem?
Not at the moment. As I said, it's not that it doesn't work, it's just that it doesn't work for some people. And as it happens, I'm one of them. It didn't, even when I punched all the right numbers in. I had no idea why. Luckily enough, I had my passport too, so I got away with it. But obviously, we are working on those issues. Some of it is possibly around the ability to scan the actual document, and some of these driver's licenses have holograms and the like over the top, and that doesn't help. But that will be fixed. In the event that she doesn't have the other two, she would be forced to operate exactly the same as those people in the Philippines or foreign workers in Australia who don't have sufficient Australian-based identification. So they end up with a basic MyGov ID and will require certain authorisations. We'll have more on the web about that reasonably soon now. Okay,
thanks, Colin. Michael's just further asked about an employee's use of the MyGov ID. He has indicated you've only referred to directors. Perhaps can you give us a little bit more clarification? I think you've indicated that it's an individual's MyGov ID, and via Access Manager you'll be able to attach that individual employee's MyGov credentials to manage client affairs.
It's actually RAM. Yep. The relationship authorization manager will allow you to provide standard or administration access to a particular person linked to their MyGov ID. And that essentially is how it would be done. Access Manager is then the link that provides access to certain clients. So that's the three-stage process. You use Access Manager exactly the same as you use today. The difference with RAM is that RAM and links to MyGov ID, whereas in today's environment, you only have an Auskey and Access Manager.
Okay, excellent. I'll just, that's as many questions as I can see. I think, Cass, can I just throw open to you? Is there anything else that you've seen?
Unmuting here, sorry. Look, I've been filtering through and responding to a lot of the questions as Colin's been dealing with them. There have been a couple with similarities. I guess the one thing that does resonate is the distinction between the MyGov ID and then the Relationship Access Manager. And MyGov ID is a personal credential. And there's the confusion, I think, between being an agent and accessing the online services for agents, and then being a business owner and accessing the business portal as opposed to the online services for agents. And I think, Colin, you'll cover that as we start talking about RAM more, and how as a business owner or a practice owner, I initially link my practice to my MyGov ID using relationship access, relationship authorization manager. So there's certainly been a lot of questions around the documentation, particularly birth certificates and driver's licenses. And you know, the feedback from the ATO at the moment is that you will be reviewing and providing further detail. I've certainly asked anybody that's having these issues to continue to feed that back to the My Gov ID team, because if they don't know about it, they don't know about it.
Yep, absolutely. Very important. And if you are having problems, apart from the website material, there is also a 1300 number, which takes you to a team who will assist people to work their way through these things.
Carol has just asked a question saying, do
Sure.
bookkeepers' clients have to set up their own My Gov ID and then give the bookkeeper access? In small business, this is usually the other way around. We would still be adding our clients to our online services for agents portal in exactly the same way that we're doing now with the online services for agents. So the client doesn't need to do anything about My Gov ID unless they specifically want to access the business portal for themselves. Would that be correct, Colin?
Yeah, essentially, when it comes to a business situation, if the business needs to interact with the ATO or other government agencies that are linked in with MyGovID, then what they do is that they link the particular employee using RAM, and then suitable accesses can be provided through that process. So then that gives them access to, for example, the business portal, and if they want to lodge an activity statement, being the bookkeeper, they would do it that way. So
but as agents, we would still be doing that directly through the online services for agents. We would be adding our clients in there.
Absolutely. As an agent, it's a very different situation. But if you think about it, it's the same as staff of businesses being given access through RAM so they can use the business portal, as it is with agents where you're talking about staff who need to be able to do certain activities on behalf of the practice for the clients of the practice. So the client side is dealt with through client update in the usual way through online services for agents or software. But the actual authorizations for the practice are done through MyGovID and RAM.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, so we might then move on to the RAM part. RAM's very interesting, and it is actually as I said, the link that allows you to manage all your business authorizations in one place when you're interacting with government online services. So that's a very important thing. The other thing is that RAM is actually a website. You access RAM through a website, and that's an important thing to just to keep in mind. Now, when it comes down to the looking at it from an agent perspective, there are a number of important things that you need to think about. And we just might move to the next screen so that we can start looking at what it actually does look like. One of the really important things that the person representing a business, the principal authority, needs to do is first of all ensure that they are authorised in the ABR. So the starting point for the principal authority, who is the person who is going to allocate out the authorisations, they need to ensure that they themselves are an eligible associate on the ABR. Now, in the current world, if you happen to be operating your practice through a trust and you have a corporate trustee who is actually the principal or the eligible associate, you will not be able to link to RAM today. We are working on fixing that at the moment. To be able to link to RAM, you need to have an eligible associate who is representing the business in the ABR. So that's a really important part to start with. Okay, So having gone through that process, how do you actually link? Logging into RAM with a MyGovID is really what occurs. So I think we might move on one picture, and I'll try to give you a better perspective simply by looking at this picture. Now, what we've done is we've broken it up into a practice owner and an employee. And we've done that to try to make it a little bit easier to see what actually happens. So let's look at a practice owner. So first of all, they downloaded their MyGovID, their identity is verified. Then what they do is they log into RAM using their MyGovID. They select Link Your Business, and that's at point 4. Now, this is where the really interesting thing comes. Point 5 allows you to select all the businesses that you are linked to as a result of the ABR that you want to link to in RAM. And this is really important. Some practices and the practice owners that I'm aware of have substantial numbers of these. And you can actually link to a very large number of ABRs if you really need to. However, for I think most of the people on the hookup, I expect that you'll have relatively small practices. There may be a couple of ABRs involved, and RAM will allow you to link to the ABRs that you can actually see. So you'll have a list. You don't have to search for them. You'll have a list. You select all the businesses that you want to link to in RAM, and then in your email, you'll verify the details. It'll actually send an email. The authorization is sent via an email. And from there, you will set that up and you'll just submit that. Having done that, you are now set up as the principal authority. You can now add new usernames and emails to allow your staff to be connected, or allocate someone who can be the administration manager, someone who can actually do all the linkings for you, and I expect that's probably what's going to happen. In those cases, then they would then go into RAM, and then they would add the new usernames and emails, enter the access level that they require, and then submit that. So that's the process that the practice owner would go through. For an employee, it's very interesting. The employee doesn't have a great amount to do. Essentially, they download their MyGovID, we verify the identity, they log into RAM using MyGovID, and they enter the authorization code that came to them in the email that was sent to them by the practice owner. That email can be whatever email that your staff member wanted to use in this case. This is where you might well use the practice email. So there's an authorization code. They simply accept that authorization, and from there on, until you change it, they have authorization set at the level that you wanted it to be set. Now, most employees will have standard authorizations, and that will allow them to operate for you. Others will have administrator authorizations, and probably only one to look after all of the other staff. But essentially, it's just a matter of accepting the authorization. That then goes back and then it's all established at that point. From there, it's just a matter of ensuring that the access manager links are made, and that's done in exactly the same that you do Access Manager today. So that's the 3-stage process to link people. Important thing, as I said, is that if you happen to be operating under a trust structure where you don't have a person who is the authorised business representative, then you won't be able to do this link to RAM today, but you will in the near future once we actually put that service into play. So that's a really potted version of how you do it. On the website, there is access to quite a lot of information about how you use RAM, and very soon now we will have a user manual up. What I will do, Rochelle, is send you a copy of that. It's a picture-based, screenshot-based user manual, so that anybody that wants a copy of it over the next week or so, before we get it up on the website, happy for you to send that out. It's for once a fantastic document that really takes you through screen by screen how you actually operate in RAM.
Thank you, Colin. That would be fantastic. And I could actually share that at the same time I share the recording with all of the registrants.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to kind of allay any fears, RAM can be a little complex because of the nature of the way practices are set up and the way that RAM operates. But the user manual takes you step by step through the whole process. I couldn't put it up on a screen for you today because it's about, from memory, about 60 pages, covering all kinds of scenarios and what you would see and how you would do things. So that's the RAM side. If we just move to the next screen. So what's available today for you is the MyGovID app through both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. There's the Business Portal Public Beta, which is using MyGovID and RAM now. It still uses Auskey, so if you're struggling to get your MyGovID up with your RAM authorization set up, you can continue to use Auskey. ATO Online Services for Agents obviously has also the public beta with MyGovID, and it's now the top icon on the page. Round about the end of January, we'll take away the icon for Auskey from that piece and move it down to a link at the bottom, so as to encourage people to actually make the move. You can import your Auskey users into RAM. If you, in the situation where you've got quite a few staff and you want to use import Auskey users, what it will allow is the importation into your RAM environment of the current accesses that are available in Auskey that you've already set through Access Manager. It will also take on your favourites that are in Online Services for Agents and the customisation that you've done for Online Services for Agents. The downside of it is if you happen to be the principal of the business, so the number one in the line, you won't be able to import yours. You will have to do your own Access Manager permissions again. But look, it's there if you want to use it. There, again, in the user manual, it does explain importing Auskey users. So that's a nice one. With the ABR, you can access using MyGovID now as well. So what's coming? There's more online government services for sure. There's quite a few that we have just published that are going into this. There's an expanded list of linking documents that can be used for verification. So we've actually given you the 4 now. That is that expanded list. There is a machine-to-machine solution that's replacing the device Auskey. Now, I haven't got yet into talking about software, but I really should tell you, when you're in a software solution, such as the Practitioner Lodgement Service, if it's a cloud-based software, then you really don't need to do anything. What will happen to gain access is that you will talk, or the software developer will talk to you and tell you how it will be done, and it's actually their credentials that are being used to actually link with us. But they'll explain that one to you. Where you're using desktop software that is then linked and it's not cloud-based, there is a machine-to-machine solution that is required to actually allow things to operate and you to send things to the ATO. Again, your software developer will actually contact you and tell you how to set that up. It is different from software to software, but there is a machine solution to deal with that, and that will replace the device Auskey that was being used in the past. So that's an important thing. We have material on the website about it, but essentially what we're saying is wait until your software developer talks to you about it, and they will explain how to do it for them. We'll continue to obviously update the user experience that you have on the feedback that's coming through. Issues that people have where we have solutions, we will publish those solutions. It's important that you use our troubleshooting page. That can be found through the link that I'll give you in a moment at the end of the presentation. You can get there, or you can just simply type into the search function troubleshooting for agents and it'll take you to the page. That gives you details of issues we have with the online services for agents, but it also does with My Gov ID and how to deal with them. So that's what's coming. Okay, let's move to the next screen, because I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a picture of what you need to do to get ready. So the first thing is get your staff and yourselves to set up the My Gov ID. If you happen to be one of those who has offshore workers or workers who are from a foreign country, then there will be a different credential. We will be publishing that very soon, talking around what sort of information you're going to need to get for that person and what they'll have to submit to us. So that's a little bit different. So setting up My Gov ID, important. Checking the ABR records are up to date, really important. This system works through the ABR, links into the ABR. Important to make sure everything is correct. Your authorised people are the correct people, correctly named. Then you link the businesses in RAM that you want to actually be linked to. You set Auskey is no longer required by your business to inactive. For now, I would say do that when you're comfortable that you've got all of your My Gov ID and RAM set up and your access manager accesses set up and you're happy that it's all working, then set them to inactive. I wouldn't do it until you're sure that you're there. Participating in the beta trials, there are a number of trials going on around these things. You can always ask to participate, but I think the important thing is to make sure that you provide us with the feedback if you're having issues so that we can do something about them. Finally, check our website for updates and the list of services that are available, and check your weekly newsletter that we publish. If you're not getting the weekly newsletter, go onto the website and subscribe to it. We will be continuing to put more information through that and giving you links to information that will be useful to you. Now on to the next. This is just a little bit of a screen just to highlight a couple of things that I've already talked about. Online services for agents is accessible through your My Gov ID. Use that link that's sitting there to get in there. When it comes to cloud-based software and it's PLS software, then the software provider will take care of that transition for you. If you have a desktop solution, your software developer will give you the machine credential and tell you how to install it on your device. If you can't provide proof of your identity, then we won't be able to provide access to online services for you because it is linked to an individual's. So if you don't meet the proof of identity, we're going to need to provide alternative identity documents, and we'll be providing restricted access. This is what I was talking about with respect to non-Australian workers who are working in Australia in some cases, and foreign workers overseas. And then the final screen, and then we can go on to further questions, just to give you some support links. So there is the ato.gov.au landing page now, where we're going to try to put all of our material around My Gov ID, RAM, etc. There are a number of links on those pages. Those links will take you to various parts of our website and also to other websites. There's the mygovid.gov.au. There are links on ours through to that one. Then there's authorizationmanager.gov.au, which gives you all the things around RAM. All very useful places to go. Watch for our webcasts, also the webcasts that your own association is doing. They're all really useful and lots of information there. As I said, the newsletter, your professional associations. We do run open forums, 45 of them a year around the country. Look for the invites to those. And then finally, there is a telephone number that you can ring for assistance, 1300 287 539. It's not your normal 137286. It is a one specifically to deal with My Gov ID and RAM. So that's where I'd like to stop. I think it's now a matter of any other questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Colin. This has been really helpful. We do have a few more questions. I understand I'd only advertise this session as a 1-hour session. So for those of you who need to move on, we will, I reiterate, be sending out a recording. So Colin, if you've got capacity, we'll stay on and answer a few more questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all.
All right. And so to reassure you, those that have to go, we'll send the recording along with Colin's documents and the Q&A document at some stage next week, as soon as we can get it to you. Okay, so I'm going to start from the bottom and work up. Can we please display the screen that has the practice owner at the top and the staff at the bottom again? Colin, is it okay if I provide attendees with a PDF of this slide deck?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all. This is, I've cobbled this one together from a number of presentations that have been done and are being done at the moment. And in particular, if anybody has been to a recent open forum, most of this is in that open forum. There are a few other bits, but this is a really good one, yes.
Okay, so I'll PDF that and include that, everybody. Anonymous would like to know why marriage certificates are not regarded as ID.
Just not yet. We will continue to look at other possibilities. The major reason for, the issue is that anything that can be authenticated through either the document verification service or other Australian services that we are able to trust, we will be looking at to add where possible. So I expect into the future there will be more, and that may well be one of them.
Okay. John has indicated, and it's possibly encouragement, John, for you to move towards My Gov ID now, because he's indicating here that the Auskey is not working for 2 months. He's reinstalled it twice. his Auskey user files are identical to an employee's user files, and she can still use it, and they're on the same cloud server. So he's just wondering why his Auskey is a problem. But yeah, as I said, maybe that's just an encouragement to move to My Gov ID.
Yeah, look, I agree. However, I would, if you really want to try to get your Auskey up and running again, you can contact us through the telephony side, or even send an email in, and we will get someone to try to help you through it. Unfortunately, there are numerous reasons for why Auskeys may cease to work, and often you need to actually get a new Auskey. We are still issuing new Auskeys, but just for how long, I don't know. But as I said, there are lots of reasons. Sometimes it's browser, sometimes it's to do with Java, sometimes it's to do with the fact that you need to clear your cache and refire up the computer. Unfortunately, Auskey is very old technology, and it does come with problems, I'm sorry to say.
All righty, no problem. We've got a question here, again from Anonymous. As a BAS agent, do we need only to create the My Gov ID and access the online services that way and have access to our clients, or do we just set up our clients again using RAM? Sorry, she apologises because she's a bit confused.
No, that's fine. Let me assure you, you're not the only one that gets confused with this one, and that's why I try to say to people, MyGov and RAM is the replacement for Auskey. So essentially what you could do with an Auskey today is what has to be done through MyGov and RAM. When it comes to linking to clients, you today would do that through the client update function in either online services for agents or software. You don't link through RAM to your clients.
Okay. Wendy would like to know, what about using a change of name by deed poll?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Anne has asked whether having your name in the ABR, does it need to be exactly the same as the MyGov ID? Her MyGov ID name is the first name, middle name, and surname. Then on the ABR, it's surname, then first name, and then middle name. So a different order by the sounds of things. And she's curious if that's why she's having problems getting it recognised.
I would say the answer is yes.
So is that just a case of going into the ABR and adjusting
adjusting the ABR, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anonymous has a MyGov ID and RAM set up. When they access the online services with MyGov ID, none of the clients appear. However, they're in the online services with Auskey. Do they need to add the clients again?
No. I would, off the top of my head, I would think that you've linked to the wrong ABR. That you need to be very careful, particularly if you're running through a trust structure, where you've got an ABR for the trust,
yep,
and you've got a personal ABR. Have a look and see where the client, which RAN the clients are attached to.
Okay.
That sounds to me as though it could be that. If it's not, then you need to contact us and we will have a look and see what's gone wrong. In most cases, it's the wrong ABR.
Okay. In that case, Colin, would it be best to use that 1300 287539
yes.
number?
Yep.
Okay.
Otherwise, they can send an email to me and I'll link it to someone to have a look and see. But first of all, check that you've connected to the right registered agent number. That often is a problem.
Okay. Dale said, we mentioned that if the principal business is a discretionary trust, we can't do RAM yet. If so,
Yeah.
when will that happen?
Very soon. Early in the new year, we will have that solution in place. Can't tell you exactly the date, but we are well aware of the problem and we're putting some effort into that one.
So, Kimberly, that should answer your question as well. Admin has said that she's doing circles connecting RAM to My Gov ID. Perhaps the best advice, Colin, would be to contact the 1300 on the screen.
Yeah, I think so. If I could tell you that the user manual was up on the website, I'd be really happy, but I don't think it is. I just had a look today. We're still battling with that. But as I said, I will send you a copy of that, Rochelle, and maybe that will help.
Okay, when we can get that out next week. So
Yes.
either call the 1300 number or just wait out for this info pack that we'll be sending to you.
Yep.
Kelly wants to know whether the agent number is linked with My Gov ID.
The agent number is actually linked to the ABR. So it's My Gov ID. You are linking to a business, which is the ABR. So it's actually, is it linked through to the agent number? Well, yes, but not that way.
Okay, awesome. So Dot's just asked if she's logging using the Auskey now. How does that work with the BAS portal being shut down?
The BAS portal has gone. You now should be logging into online services for agents. So if you go to the landing page, you will not find any access to the portal. Just go into online services for agents.
Excellent. Nolene's asked, will staff have to provide the business, the email address they've registered their MyGov ID to?
All they need to do is provide the email address that they want their authorisation to come to.
Yes, I've understood. Drummond has a number of staff with overseas birth certificates and overseas passports, and they currently all have Auskeys. If they were Australian citizens, will that identification be sufficient in the future? And I think we might have answered that one.
If they're Australian citizens, they should have a passport, a Medicare card, or driver's license. If they can't come up with two of those, then they will end up being having to use the restricted service, so they'll only get a base level MyGov ID. But if they've got two of those, then they can get a standard of MyGov ID, and from there on, no problem. Okay,
excellent. Thanks. Anne's just confirmed she had the correct ABR setup, so she's going to call the line. So Sonia's made the comment. So RAM is just connecting business to MyGov ID, not all of your clients.
Yeah, exactly. RAM is authorising the person to act on behalf of your business. You then can decide as to which of your clients that you can and what accesses they should have to the clients.
Excellent. With Auskey, I'm just answering one in relation to, there was just a comment, I guess, really, as ATO moving too quickly on this, but I guess my response to that, Colin, was just that the concerns around the security of the Auskey are significant enough to mean that we're pushing forward with this from a security perspective.
Yeah, the other thing is that you need to understand that Auskey has a limited life.
Yeah.
And that limited life is fixed. So yes, we are moving fast. I accept that, and that's not comfortable for any of us. But at the end of the day, it is a necessity because Auskey will just cease to operate.
Yep. Okay, I know Cass has got a question. I'll keep sorting through these typed questions, but I know Cass has got a question about browsers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Colin, is there a preferred browser for using RAM? Because I've had some feedback and we've experienced it ourselves that using Chrome seems to throw us into a bit of a tech loop. And yet we resolved it using Firefox.
You're quite right. On our website, there is an explanation of the browsers that are most suitable for RAM. There is also the same thing for online services for agents. So, and there is a difference, and that example you just gave is totally correct.
Yeah, and is that being resolved so that we've got a standardised browser?
At this point, I cannot answer that because essentially it is dependent upon the browser provider. We do what we can, but browser providers regularly change things, and we try to fix to match. But what we're doing is we test browsers against the product. And where we come up with a problem, we'll start talking to the browser provider about it.
So the best advice for anybody that finds themselves in a little bit of an error loop, if they're using one browser, would be to try an alternative browser and see if that resolves it in the first instance.
Yeah, absolutely. But go onto the website and have a look at the compatible browsers. That will give you the direction that you want.
Perfect. That's great. There's been, again, still questions about ABR, and certainly from my experiences, one of my initial barriers to getting through to RAM was my ABR record was not accurate.
Yes.
So again, probably stressing the point that before you even try and look at RAM, confirm the details on the ABR are actually correct, and that you are an authorised contact on the ABR. So what was the technical word you used for that? That was right at the very beginning. But basically, you've got the authority to act for the ABR.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
I can't think of what the word is now.
And also the other relevant point for BAS agents as well is that many of us that have got that aren't sole traders or partners have got both a individual BAS agent registration number, but then we've also got our company BAS agent registration numbers, and that you'd be looking at linking at the company level. So that also does link back to the correct registrations and setups and links with the ABR as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to link to the ABR, and you need to make sure that your clients are actually attached to the correct agent number.
Yeah. Great. John's just asked a question. What security exists to prevent a staff member using my software to lodge clients who are their own and not the practice's? He's had a staff member running a clandestine service from my practice. My understanding on that would be that unless the client is added to the practice, that's actually not going to be possible at all. There's nothing for that will stop that client adding John as a authorised user through their business portal, but it won't be linked back to the practice.
That's correct. The issue with security exists today. You should be able to, if they are using your practice software to actually lodge for someone else, there will be an audit trail and you'll be able to pick that up. In the case of online services for agents and being able to access that at any time during the day through using another form of mobile device, what we're looking at trying to do for agents, and look, that exists today. If you've got an Auskey sitting on a USB, And funnily enough, there are a lot of those floating around that principals of practices often don't know about. Then we are looking at the possibility of providing agents with a report, which is essentially an audit log that'll tell you when your staff are accessing that service. We won't be able to do anything about restricting it, just the same as we haven't been able to in the past. So that's an issue. But when it comes to lodging through PLS, that seems to me to be something else entirely and needs to be considered from the point of view of you would be able to see in your audit logs that was happening.
Okay.
But look, dishonesty in staff is something that exists today. That doesn't go away. They just find different ways to do it.
Yeah, fabulous. One of the other questions that's been asked, Colin, is regarding not-for-profits. And where am I? Accessing, how does a not-for-profit incorporated board provide online access for BAS purposes for an employee of the not-for-profit? So I would assume that they're meaning there the not-for-profit would have access to the business portal and are looking to roll out to one of their employees access to the business portal.
Look, without trying to get into the complexities of not-for-profits, and there is a separate area in the ATO that is specifically supporting not-for-profits. The linking is exactly the same as for an agent. It's done through RAM and follows the same processes. However, if a not-for-profit is struggling there is an area in the ATO specifically to ask for assistance. And Jennifer Moltulsanti is the SES who's looking after that. Because there are other complexities there with part-time workers, things like that, where knowledge, experience. But look, there is no difference.
Yeah.
It works the same.
So essentially the challenge with not-for-profits isn't so much the employee being given the credentialing, it's about who in the organisation has the top-level credentialing to begin with.
Exactly, and who they nominate as the administrator.
Perfect.
And then which staff that they want to allow access to the business portal through there.
Fabulous. So linking back to the ATO and the specialists in that area is strongly recommended.
Yes, if they have problems there that they can't solve, absolutely.
Great. Another question that has come through is, does the email address for the practice owner in ABR have to be the same as the practice owner's My Gov ID?
I don't think so, but honestly, I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think so.
Okay. So that was a question from Kylie. Possibly contact the ATO directly on that one to see if
just ask. I will certainly go back and talk to my guys about it, but I've not heard of any need to have those two the same.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Rochelle, I've stolen a bit of your thunder here. I'm a BAS agent operating as an individual sole trader without any employees. Do you need to have a new user myself in step 8, or can I skip this? So
you don't need a new user. You just operate as, well, essentially you give yourself the accesses when you go in there. You work as that's right. As a practice owner, you link through to RAM as the practice owner, and you give yourself the necessary accesses. Mm-hmm. You don't need others. Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's it for questions. So I'll hand back to Rochelle.
Beautiful. Thanks, Cassandra.
Yes, excellent. Thank you to both Colin and Cassandra. And we still, have 120 people hanging around to hear those questions answered. So obviously much needed. Colin, thank you very much. And just to wrap up, I suppose I'm just going to reiterate that next week we'll send out a link to the recording, a copy of the PDF documents with the guide that Colin's talked about for RAM, also a copy of the Q&As that we'll put together falling out of this session. And we'll also send through the contact details that are appropriate if you need some assistance navigating through this change. And Colin, we may even try and sort something else out perhaps early February to allow members to have had some time to navigate through their transition and just to tie up any loose ends. So I'll reach out to your team if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine. Happy to do another session, Rochelle, to clear up anything that at that stage. By then, of course, we'll have a lot of things will have happened and will have advanced quite a bit. And I suspect we will want to talk a little bit further about the offshore workers and onshore non-residents and how that is working. It will be clunky, but at the end of the day, as you said earlier, security of the information that we have available is absolutely vital, and we need to ensure that there is a level of security and privacy that's provided. So as clunky as it is, at least it takes us to a situation where we know who we're talking to.
Absolutely.
And that's really important.
Yep. Well, again, thank you for the time, but to also, Colin, thank you for the great work that you do and the amount of listening that you do within our community to, navigate all of these different things from STP right through to your new role now. So, yeah, thanks.
A pleasure, Rochelle, and a pleasure to talk to everybody.
Thanks for attending, everybody. I'll sign out now.